We're on Shin Chav. We are finishing Schita today. Yud Gimel. Dores sheleg biraglav ve'eno choshesh. Person can walk on snow, don't have to worry about it, even though you're going to be crushing the snow and melting the snow. Okay? Mishnah Berurah explains, Kevan de'eno mitkaven lazeh. Since you don't have any kavana when you step on the snow, that you're making water. Right? The issue is, are you worried about nolad? Okay. Another reason he gives from the Taz. First was from the Gra, the second was from the Taz. The efshar lizara bazesh lo gazru bey. Whenever it's something that's pretty much impossible, we don't tell you not to walk, we don't tell you not to eat. So in general, we don't have gzeras when it's impossible to avoid them. Popular question, can you put bucket and an ice on Shabbos on the table for people to drink from? So I was told that the minhag is to be mekel, most are definitely mekel. Of course, there are always some who are machmer. The reason being, right, you're not allowed, according to minhag Ashkenaz, it's only by minhag Ashkenaz, we're worried about nolad even when you don't do it beyadayim. Even if you don't physically try and melt it. So the only time it's a problem is when you have kavana to get the water. When you want to generate water from the ice, so then, even though you're not doing it biyadayim, that's when the Ramah is machmer. But your kavana is actually, you don't want the water, you want the ice to stay as ice cubes as long as possible because people want ice for their drink. So since it's not the kavana, not a problem. Just as far as making ice on Shabbos, or putting ice or ice cream back into the freezer. So the minhag is certainly to put ice cream back into the freezer, sorbet, whatever. But as far as making ice lechatchila, so that's a machloket. Again, because you're not doing it biyadayim, so Sfardim say for sure no problem. According to most Ashkenazim, they'll tell you not to make ice lechatchila. But many will say if it's bishat etzorech, and bishat etzorech is very loose, everyone has a different definition. Some I know are mekel and Beit Shemesh in particular, it gets very hot in the summer, and you need it to keep cool, to keep comfortable. So, right. It's a chumrah that the Ramah brings, so Ashkenazim are machmer lechatchila, but bishat etzorech, many are mekel. The lashon just point on Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa, he says, Tov, it's good to not make ice on Shabbos. And he brings in the footnotes, reasons why it might not apply. Okay, I think we'll go on. Yudalit. Haram Rotenberg, Matir Lahatil Miraglayim Bashelig, Viharosh Hayan Yisar. So can you urinate? Can you, on ice, on Shabbos? What's the problem we're discussing over here is basically nolad. So since it's, again, eino mechavein, and that's not, even if it's a psik reisha, we see one's allowed to. Mishnah Berurah says, okay, tov, lizayar if possible. But if someone needs to go, they need to go, and one could be mekel, like the mekel opinion. Okay. Just to reiterate, we learned before if a person wants to urinate on a plowed, freshly plowed, especially the first plowing of a field, so there's a din derabanan that it's aser. But we don't see, it doesn't seem that it's aser otherwise. We're going to get to lash in a minute, but could there be an issue of lash if it's soft dirt? So it could be. I'll leave that as a question. But when we say kavod abrios, makom etzorech, yesh lahatir, because it's not done derech, and certainly can't be worse than a din derabanan.
And
Zoreya. So I don't think there's an issue of Zoreya when it comes to urine. I think it kills it. I don't think that's an issue. If it would be an issue, then kavod abrios would allow it if it's necessary.
Unless you're mechavein to water your plants.
Unless you're mechavein, but I don't think the Metzias allows that. I ask a gardener, but I don't think that the urine helps. But maybe that's a good question. That's okay. Ted Vav. Asur lifros sudar al pia chaviv litin al gabav hakli shedolim bo shem yavoli de schita. Okay, so we're back to a little bit of the schita with towels, and we mentioned before it was more regarding libun, but now it's a little bit from schita. So there's an isser we're talking about clothing that you care about, that you might come to do schita. So then you're not allowed to put it over the chavit when it's going to get all wet. About begeda, and we're assuming there's no issues of malabin, of libun, especially if it's white and dirty and you want to come to clean. But okay, so aval begeda lifros alav, but normal towels that we have that they get wet all the time and we don't care and we're not worried about coming to do schita. Mutar she'eno choshesh alav v'sochto. So then that wouldn't be a problem. Okay.
What's the mitzvah? Why is he doing this?
I guess to be I don't know. Ted Zayin. Asur lahadek mochin befi pach sheyesh mashkin mishum schita. Okay, so now what the case is here is you have some kind of a sponge or wool, some kind of a stopper, and it's wet. And by definition, when you touch it and push it in, you're going to be doing schita. And the schita of the liquid is going to go back into your pitcher, so it's denichale. And so that's a simple way to understand. And in that case, it's asur to press this mochin into the opening of the pitcher in order to make, because you're going to end up making schita, it's a psik reisha denichale. That's certainly when it's asur. Mishnah Berurah adds, right? Even if you don't have kavana to squeeze it out, because it's wet, when you push on it, it's a psik reisha, it's going to come out. We'll see it gets very intertwined over here. Just a quick reminder, there's a famous halacha, psik reisha, dela nichale versus denichale. So, the general rule is, a psik reisha, we're going to read it, it's when it's for sure going to happen. Psik reisha, you cut off the chicken's head and it's velo yamut, it's not going to die. So in a case where it's for sure going to happen, so then if it's denali, if it's dela nichale, you don't want it to happen, but it's a psik reisha, it's still asur. And certainly by a malacha daraisa. The question is, if it's it can make it isser darabanan, if it's dela nichale, and isser daraisa denichale. What happens by an Isser Malacha that's only an Isser Darabanan, which is very often the case. So the general rule by Sfardim is they go lakula. Whenever it's a psik reisha dela nichale by an Isser Darabanan, lachatchila they're mekel, and the general rule by Ashkenazim is they're machmer. Even though it's Isser Darabanan, but since it's a psik reisha, they're machmer lachatchila. However, whenever there's a bishat tzarech, sakana, or it's very difficult, so then they're generally mekel. So we'll see how this plays out. Yud Zayin. Safog ein mekanchin bo ela im ken yesh bo beit achizak zera shema yischat. Okay, so using a regular sponge on Shabbos, so that's if you're going to be holding it, that's asur. But if it has a handle, it's mutter. And I explain why is holding it is going to be a psik reisha. It's wet. As soon as you hold it and you squeeze it out, it's going to be a psik reisha. And then machloket rishonim, how to explain why a handle is okay. So one of them is because it's possible that you can use it if you're using a handle, and it won't be schita. So in other words, it's not a psik reisha. That's one explanation. The Rambam says. The Raavad says no, because we look at it as a pitcher, as a kli. Once you add the beit achiza, in other words, we're assuming this whole case is an isser darabanan. So once we're talking about schita by an isser darabanan with the sponge, so then that's when it's that's when it becomes. I think that's the situation. But regardless, either way, with the beit achiza, so then we look at it like a pitcher that's full of mayim, of water, and then therefore it's as we look at it as if you're just pouring it out, and it's not a problem.
It's derech lichluch.
Derech lichluch, right? And you don't want the water. You don't even want the water in these cases. Schita. So it's definitely an isser derabanan because you don't want the water. If you would want the water, so then I think it depends on the material. Could be an isser deraisa. Yurchet, but here it's going the ibud. synthetic materials in general, we assume there's no schita. That's a general rule.
Let's hold on. Let's try and pause the questions till after the share, so that we don't ruin the report.
Okay. Yurchet chavit shepakeku. One second. Just to point out, the Gra points out that it should be mishum schita, not shama yischot. So it also depends on which perush in the Rishonim. Yurchet chavit shepakeku b'pkak shel pishtan listom nekev shedofnei shemotzim bo yain. So here you have a hole on the side of the barrel, and that's where the wine comes out of, and you have like a little plug, a plug made out of flax. So he says, Yesh mishum matir alfa pishi yafshar shelo yischot. Even though it's a psik reisha, it's for sure going to squeeze out when you push it in. It's matir. V'hu shelo yetachtav kli. Because in this case, the wine that's getting squeezed out is going on the outside. And it's going li'ibud. It's going to get wasted. You have no benefit from it. That's why you don't have a kli underneath it. So in other words, whatever gets wrung out, you don't care for it. It may be a psik reisha, but it's delani chale. You have no interest in it. The kevan she'enu nena b'schita zo have a psik reisha. So since you get no benefit, it's going to drip down the side of the barrel or outside from the flax. It's going to drip down. It's delani chale umuter. Since it's delani chale, it's muter. I'll just read it inside. Perish isur nimshach behechrach midvar zeh. Psik reisha means for sure it's going to happen. It's not maybe. Kemo hamavet hanimshach behechrach behatazat harosh. Because when you chop off the head of a chicken, it's for sure going to die. That's where the expression comes from. We hear all the time, what is psik reisha? This is where it comes from. It's a phrase from the Gemara. V'chalku alav yamru, and then they argue on him, some of these, some of the Rishonim, the af al gav, de lo nichale, kevan the psik reisha hu aser. They say, no, since it's a psik reisha, even though it's de lo nichale, it's a psik reisha still. And so therefore, it should be aser at least lechatchila. Alright, aser midarabanan. V'ha'olam nohagim heter b'davar. The Shulchan Aruch says, I understand, but the minhag is to be matir. V'yesh l'lamer aleim zechut, and you can also say another zechut why it's mutter. The kevan shehabarza aruka chutz le'na'oret v'ein yad magad le'na'oret mutar midei dahave asfog sheyesh lo beit achiza. Because it has this long spout, and therefore, I don't understand the Metzias 100%, I apologize, but basically it's got this long spout. Here, let's read it inside here. Perush ha'aruch, it's a svog hu al rosh dag, echad gadol shabayam, it's like on a stick or on the end of a fish, you have the sponge, u'b'shah shemerim rosho listakel ba'olam, and when it lifts up its head, yorid oto asfog al ena ve'eno roya klum ve'lulei zeh lo hayta sfina nitzolet mipanav.
Sponges do come from the sea.
Yeah, sponges do come from the sea. Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. I think this is a type of fish they used to use. Anyway, sheyesh lo, so it has we consider it like it has a beit achiza. Well, but it's not really a great taina. It's not a great teretz he gives, so therefore it's not ideal. Tov lanhigam shelo yeklitachat echavit b'shah shepokel nekev. So therefore he says, if you're going to be using this kind of a chavit where you have water dripping out, make sure it doesn't catch into a kli, and therefore it's a psik reisha deloni chale. So it's going to go straight to waste. Just as a side issue, the Mishnah Berurah points out that when you have liquid that spills out on a table, again this is related, but it's not really, it's not directly related to the Shulchan Aruch. If you spill liquids on a table, so he says you're allowed to move it, use a sponge, use a spoon, use whatever you want, but don't push it hard along a tablecloth, because you're going to end up causing squeezing out of the tablecloth. Really what you're trying to do is just to push all the liquid that's on top of the tablecloth and not to squeeze the tablecloth itself. And in general, if there's a spill on a table or a spill on the floor, again, if there's a lot of, you want to get a towel that's bigger than the amount of water so that you just, cannot possibly lead to doing schita with the towel. That's the, lechatchila, what we try and do. Of course, if the spill is too big, obviously a sponge is better, but if you have no choice and people are going to slip and it's a problem, You can use what you need to use a towel, just to make sure that when you pick it up, you're not doing any schita.
For the Americans, let's just correct, not a mop, but the sponge is that, they don't know what it is.
Oh, okay. It's basically it's rubber,
It's like
a rubber device to push
water.
A squeegee. Squeegee is a better word. So, okay. Not to be using cloth. So that's lechatchila. We to avoid getting into schita issues. But mi'ikar adin, in general, it's mutter. Okay, but you don't have kavana to do schita, and there's no other way to do it. So then we allow. Okay. Okay. Schita b'se'ar also. Is there a schita when it comes to hair? So, deraisa, there's definitely no schita. Rambam writes, pater aval aser. So that's if you have your hair drenched and you're taking your hand and you're squeezing out the water. What about using a towel to dry your hair? So many say it's, Shomer Shabbos, Kilcha says, for example, says it's mutter lechatchila to dry your hair with a towel. You don't have to do any kind of a shinui. Others say you should pat it down, but you shouldn't be doing, you shouldn't be rubbing it hard. Everyone says not to do a squeezing motion, but okay. Yud Tet. Litain karkom b'tavshel mutar. Can you dye your food? That's the question. So you're allowed to put this spice, into your saffron. Saffron. You're allowed to put the saffron into your tavshel, and that makes it okay. Ve'ein lachush lo mishum tzaveya. Even though it's going to dye your food, de'ein tzviya ba'ochlin. There is no tzviya ba'ochlin. There's no one of the 39 malachos is tzviya, dyeing your clothing. But when it comes to food, so the halacha is there is no tzviya. So Mishnah Berurah points out, mi'ikar adin, there's no problem to dye your food. Your purpose, certainly if your purpose is for flavor, and the flavor, whatever you're doing, is going to add a color, everyone agrees that's 100% mutter. But if your whole purpose is just to color the food, it has nothing to do with making it better, so then there's a machloket. So most poskim say you're allowed to, lechatchila, you're allowed to mix colors of wine. Yeah, sometimes people want red wine, but they mostly have white wine, or they want the flavor of the white wine. So there's an Indian of having white wine, so they might want to add a little bit of red wine or grape juice. So the Mishnah Berurah first says it's mutter lechatchila, and that's the ikar adin. But then he points out that the Nishmas Adam says one should refrain. So in general, generally most Ashkenazic poskim will say it's aser lechatchila, and
it's only when you want only the color.
That's if you only care about the color, and it's not going to help the food taste any better. So many Ashkenazi poskim say one should be machmer if possible. Sephardic poskim would say lechatchila you don't need to, in general you don't need to, but it's tavo alav bracha if you're machmer. That's the okay. Kaf yesh misha omer sheha'ochel tutim v'shar peros etzovim. If you're going to be eating food that makes color, that stains, tzarich lizar shelo yiga b'yadav tzvos b'bgadav o b'mapa mishum tzaveya. You should be careful not to touch your clothing and a mappa, a napkin. So I think we're assuming here these are not chad pami, disposable napkins that you throw in the garbage. At least that's what Shomer Shabbos Kilchasa says. Those you don't have to worry at all. No, of course I don't think they exist on this.
So what do you do then? You just got to wash it.
So you should.
Cloth napkins. Yeah.
Right. So, but he's saying no. He's saying you're not allowed to.
You're not allowed to.
He's quoting an opinion that says you should first wash your hands with water, dip it in water or whatever, and then, or maybe lick it with your fingers. I'm sure that's what they used to do, and then that's the best way to avoid it. Again, it sounds like it's only l'chumra of al mikar din. It seems to be you're allowed to, because it's derech lichluch. Let's keep reading. Aval im tzaveya pito b'mashke haperes leitlan ba. But if you're going to be dipping your food into color, then that's certainly no problem. The ein tzviya ba'ochlin. There's no tzviya when it comes to ochlin. So this is a din lechatchila. So generally speaking, it's recommended, that if you have, certainly if it's going to be permanent begadim, a permanent napkin, to rinse it first, and have it clean from blood.
Using your hand.
Your hand, if your hand is dirty. But let's say a person is bleeding or they're eating, so the general thing is if it's Band-Aid, throwaway napkins, so some are machmer lechatchila to clean it first, but mikar din it's okay. Also, when women check themselves for nida, so also these cases are generally mutter. Even if it's I think you throw them away, and so it depends. So if you have no choice, so then you could be mekel. If it's throwaway lechatchila, the minhag I think is to be mekel. If it's something that you're going to be keeping long term, so then lechatchila we try and be machmer.
But you think
So and the yesh, so the Mishnah points out, bottom line yesh mekilin because it's derech lichluch, and you could definitely be. Mishnah says definitely yesh lismach when you need to. He just points out by a beged edom, people are more strict. If you have a real cloth that's red, and you're going to be using it for blood or strawberries, so that's definitely, that could be a real shaila.